always start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Director Sorensen.
Second.
Second from Director Hathaway. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign if opposed. Motion carries 5-0. All right, item 4 is our consent agenda. We don't discuss the consent agenda, so I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Director Cross. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Director Sorensen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign if opposed. Motion carries 5-0. All right, item 5.1, new business, is a presentation of our fiscal year 2021 audit, and we have some folks here to present for us.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm Tom Olinger, the governmental service partner at ABDO. I'm the partner in charge of the job here, and with me is Kelsey, who has been an associate with us and been working with Lee Sewer the last few years here. So we're going to kind of do a joint presentation, but as we kind of go through, if there are any questions that you have, feel free to ask as we go, and we'll try to get answers for you there as we go through that. So Kelsey will kind of start us off and go through just kind of some of the audit findings and just the overall audit itself, and then I'll get into some of the numbers for Lee Sewer, and then we'll certainly ask any questions. We have some key performance indicators with other schools to kind of benchmark there. What you'll see is things are, some trends have definitely upticked because of some of the change in the dollars that are here, but we'll kind of discuss this as we go. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelsey. I'm guessing I'll have to launch the, or oops, say the wrong one, sorry.
You're on.
We have a Kelsey there because I'm not prepared to present.
Yes, we do. Oh, got it. Okay. There we go. All right. So.
So we're going to start off with the auditor's responsibilities. So our responsibility is to opine on the financial statements on whether or not they're free of material misstatement. In order to do that, we do a bunch of testing. Obviously, we can't test every single balance and transaction, so we test through samples, inquiries, confirmations, etc. We did express an unmodified or clean opinion that states the financial statements were presented fairly in all material mistake, aspects. And that's the same as prior years. We're also engaged to test some Minnesota legal compliance. That would be making sure you have enough collateral, if you're paying your bills on time, etc. We did have 2 new compliance findings this year that I'll go through with the next slide. The district also did spend over $750,000 of federal money this year, which triggered a single audit report. And so pretty much that's just more compliance on those federal dollars and making sure you're spending them correctly. And there was no findings related to the single audit. So like I said, we did have 2 new compliance findings this year, just something to be aware of and try to clean up. The first one relates to the claims approval. So state statute states that claims should be approved at monthly board meetings and should ideally be approved before they are paid. Obviously, if the bill's due before the next board meeting, that is when they could be approved after they have been paid. During our testing, we found that you guys weren't seeing the claims at each monthly board meeting, and they weren't being approved until about a year after they were paid. So just something to clean up. Lastly, UFARS requires every student activity to have a purpose statement and for them to be updated annually. During our testing, we found it was kind of hit or miss if your activities had them in place or not, and then if they did have them, they were kind of years old. So just a reminder to have them in place and keep them updated. Last thing for me, we do have some future accounting standards coming your way next year, so there will be some changes to lease accounting and some deferred compensation plans we're always here to help, so if you have any questions on those, just reach out. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll kind of get into some of the financial numbers as we go here. So we'll first take a look at some of the general fund activities here as far as the general fund expenditures per ADM. As you can kind of see the trend here, the ADM has been dropping over the last couple of years here. We're at the 915 for this year. There was an uptick in that overall general fund expenditures per ADM, which is about 12,867, which was up from that 11,500. Couple things to note here. I think expenditures were up because you had some funding with ESSERs and GEARS that was offset with that. So expenditures were increased, but they were funded. What I kind of take a look at this too is a combination of what you spend and then also your general fund balance on where you're at too. So a combination of the student count going down and then some of those additional expenditures for those federal dollars going up did increase this amount here too. This is something that we've kind of seen across the board with school districts is those expenditures going up. You know, I think the one thing to keep in mind, I would probably say that overall increase was probably flat on where your ADM is. You know, just that you kind of kept pretty consistent with that. But if that keeps trending down, make sure your kind of expenditures keep following with what that is. So just, that's probably a trend to keep watching, and I'm sure you're well aware of student counts and stuff like that, but this was a little bit unusual because of all those federal dollars.
Do we have that number without the federal dollars in it?
I do not have it off the top of my head, but there's you know, definitely some significant amounts
Yeah,
that
well,
were
I
in
think
there.
we
So
had like 500,000 spent
Yeah,
on that
yeah, so-
itemization system, so there's some big numbers in there, it's just
yeah,
curious to see.
you know, and I would kind of say even over the, you know, if you look over the last 3 years, what, you know, you're right around that 11.5.
Mhm.
You know, I'd probably say you're maybe just a little bit above that of where you're at. As I had mentioned earlier, you know, with the general fund balance, you know, this is, you know, monitoring your expenditures. You know, I think the where you get into trouble is you start seeing your fund balances go down. You know, as this. So with this, your fund balance did increase for this last year. You know, and kind of taking a look at this graph, you know, your overall unassigned fund balance was at about 1.6 million at the end of the year, which was an uptick and a little bit above where your normal fund balance policy is. Once again, I've also seen this with school districts that fund balance policy, or that fund balance has been increasing over there, just with some of the uncertainties with expenditures and stuff like that. They've taken a little bit more conservative approach on there, so that is kind of a trend that we have been seeing there too. The other thing to note here too, that this is the unassigned fund balance. There was some spend down on restrictions too. So that is not included in there. You know, we had the long-term facilities maintenance spent down this year, and which was about 250,000 that we dropped on with the fund balance there. So a combination of the increase in the unassigned and the decrease in the long-term facilities maintenance was kind of makes up as we kind of see your fund balance increase next year. As an overall percentage, you know, we kind of noted that unassigned did increase a little bit, but this is the overall general fund. You kind of see that flat because there was just a small increase in fund balance, but it's the increase of that less the restrictions kind of keeps that pretty consistent from 20 to 21 there.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Does that relate to, so Region 9, is that districts within a region that are similar size?
Yes. No, that is all within Region 9. All the school districts within Region 9.
Okay.
Yep. Which has been a little consistently, you know, above those averages, but. As you can kind of see, I could kind of probably see a little bit of an uptick in both the Region 9 and the statewide averages for next year too. Okay. General fund budget to actual, as I noted, we did have a small increase there. We had budgeted about a $200,000 deficit, and we came in at about $80,000 positive for fund balance. So this is the overall fund balance, including restrictions and unassigned there. So at the end of the year, we had about almost 1.9 million in fund balance. You know, I think that with the expenditures, there was, and I think this was intentional with, you know, some of the drop in the student counts, the elementary and secondary instruction came in below budget, and that made up a good chunk of that positive expenditure variance there. Because really, you adjusted for the federal dollars in your amended budget. General fund revenues per ADM, as you kind of see, the state sources had stayed relatively consistent compared with the region and statewide averages that you are here. We are seeing, you know, we're comparing 2020 numbers. As you guys kind of see for 2021, the federal dollars did increase for you guys, but we're really going to see those comparisons be the same with the statewide and region averages for next year. And then the local sources, which running a little bit below, as we kind of talk about a little bit, you know, with property taxes and other sources. Later in this slide, we'll talk at where you sit with that too. So
In that general fund, that's just our like operating referendum, right? Or,
correct. Yeah.
Because the building stuff would be in a different cost.
Well, as
section
far
of
as the
budget.
building costs.
Well, no,
or
like if we
the
were to build a new
construction?
building, a bond.
Oh, yes, yes. The construction side and all of that is in a separate fund. This is just operational.
Okay. So because I mean, I know we know we're lower on building bond costs, but we are
Yeah.
also lower on operating revenue per student.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Taking a little look at the property taxes that I mentioned there, per ADM, you're kind of below the averages there at about 1,366. We'd like to do the comparisons of the average school district per property tax home, and then also you know, just look at the per 100,000 value after credits. This kind of gives an idea of what is the impact on the tax citizens here. Because I think this can vary based on what kind of, do you have commercial within your area, do you have ag, and what that impact is on the residents. So as you can kind of see, in each of those, you're running below the averages of where other school districts are within the state here. So, you know, I think, you know, kind of going forward, if those, you know, if expenditures keep going up, they're probably going to have to be funded by additional levies. And just being aware of that could occur here. Overall general fund expenditures, as you can kind of see that we did have that increase for this year. Let's go turn to that page here. Yeah, so you know we did have they've stayed pretty consistent in basically the departments that you have there. We just had an overall increase as we went there. So, you know, I would say elementary and secondary, as we talked a little bit, did decrease a little bit, but the rest have stayed pretty close to the same and right around that $12 million range for the expenditures. General fund expenditures per ADM. You know, as I noted, we did have that uptick, combination of the decrease in students and also the expenditures. What we do here is we do a comparison with the statewide averages. And we kind of project out on where that line will go going forward in the future because we don't have the 2020 numbers. But I will say that that dotted line is going to uptick at a steeper rate, probably more closer to, maybe not quite as steep as yours, but it will be a little bit steeper rate because we've seen that across the board and the data is going to show differently because of the esters and years. Elementary and secondary, you know, I think this kind of also shows, you know, what you're spending per student there, and there was an increase there. Once again, we're going to see the same thing happening because some of those federal dollars went to there. But still kind of running below the averages of what the other what the other state, schools across the state have. But, I think you've kind of, reversed the trend a little bit of that downward trend, from 20 to 21 with that uptick. Really depending upon what that future funding is going forward, just to kind of monitor that and the student count. Special ed, as you can kind of see, has been increasing from pretty much since 18. Some of this has to do with, just your mix of students that you currently have. So that has been increasing over the years. Kind of keep in mind that, monitor this on where that funding is coming from. A good chunk of it is federal and state dollars, but there is a portion that is, that will be coming from general revenues within the school. So something to keep looking at that mix and determining what that future looks like. Food service budget to actual, we did have a net change of about $57,000 this year. Revenues did exceed that budget. I think we're finding that the food service was a little hard to budget this year, just knowing what that is. The one thing I would say about this is to kind of keep in mind is, making sure that you're in compliance with the excess cash there. So basically, the net cash can exceed the average of 3 months within the food service. So when I see this increase, I just kind of want to put that out there to make sure that we're monitoring that going forward.
So how did you rectify that? I mean, spend it down somehow, or?
Yeah, I mean, usually taking a look at how you can spend that down. Is there other improvements that you can do to the food service and various things like that, or watching the rates too, so. But I once again, I have seen an increase in that because of a lot of the federal
Well, we're
dollars
not
that came in.
charging anybody for lunches,
Yep,
so
Right.
Yep.
you can't move that lever right now.
No, you can't, yeah.
Everybody
Prices
gets
when it's
some.
already zero.
Yeah, exactly, it's hard to do that, so no. But I think just kind of be aware of that, but I have seen that increase consistently with schools too.
Can invest in our kitchen or something.
Yeah. We kind of see the overall expenditures did have an uptick there, which you've kind of kept that below the averages there with that. Community service also did have a positive fund balance of about 91,000. So at the end of the year, we had 175,000 there. Combination of increased fees related to that and funding, and then the expenditures came in under budget by about 25,000. So that's once again, that was kind of another one that was sometimes a little hard to budget, just because you didn't know where your guys were going to be at and throughout the year. And looking at that, the expenditures above, and I would say this, this can change based on the type of programs you have within your community and the ECFE programs and stuff like that. So I've seen them on both extremes, and it's really how much you invest into that community.
Well,
service.
in addition to that, we are the fiscal host for the consortium.
Oh, yeah.
I think that ABE, right? The
Yep.
ABE consortium, so we may look like we take in and expend more just because of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, not everybody has a kids club and a preschool
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
those things too, so.
So you can kind of look at this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, what you're investing in the community for. Debt service, couple of bond issues there. The good news is it's out on the horizon of being done with the debt payments. So 2026, you've consistently had that, roughly 1.3 million annually for there. So come 2026, that will drop off, and obviously the levy tied to the debt service will too. But a lot of times that means investing into new infrastructure after that drops off. So that's certainly on the horizon there. Cash and investment balances have been increasing. I think as you talked a little bit about the general fund, that cash did increase this year, and in combination of the food service a little bit too that we talked about earlier, but just shy of about $4 million in cash. And I didn't look at it too closely, but sometimes this can fluctuate by the amount of receivable that's left for the state and federal dollars too. Just the timing on when it's collected. Last item here is overall GASB 68. What I point out to this is just what your current liability is. Note that this is funded by the contribution rates that you work into your annual budget that you have, so it's not like you have to come up with these dollars tomorrow, but just to note that was about 7.2 million in total pension liability, which I didn't jot down what last year's were, but there was an increase in that, but we'll just kind of keep monitoring that. But like I said, when they look at where the unfunded rates are, they'll adjust any contributions that they feel moving forward. So with that, I'll certainly open it up to any questions as you go through the presentation. But
Well, I always certainly appreciate the way you present the information, because this is like, for me, always the most, it's digestible, it's easy to understand and to kind of figure out as board members what's going on, because school finance is really crazy complicated, and you do a good job of making it seem, approachable. There aren't any big surprises, I don't think, in here really, in terms of what the data shows.
No.
We're kind of stable, really,
Yeah.
in a lot
Yeah.
of ways.
yeah, and I think that's it. And like I said, it's mainly just the funding this year was the biggest thing with the single audit, additional single audit testing that we had, and a few other things. But and as you kind of know, this is a draft. What we will do is we will finalize it this week, and we will send the report up to the MDE this week. So that should all be taken care of. We just had a couple loose ends that we need to clean up on our end, but nothing should really change.
So I don't have questions for you guys, but I do have two questions for our team here. Jim, can we get this, I would like to see this